Hey, so my DM decided that we were gonna do an underwater D&D campaign, and I'm gonna start this off with some shipwreck bases. Basically, what I'm going for is I'm using some coffee stir sticks. I use basically a matchstick, like case, popsicle sticks, and between the three of those, it kind of gives me a variety of lumber to choose from. And then I can kind of build the facade of this shipwreck. I'm just cladding the outside of the popsicle stick with some thinner pieces of coffee stir sticks just to kind of give it the plank look. And then I'm going to add a railing on top. You can see there I've also 3D printed an octopus, and I cut off a couple of those tentacles and use them later. As it goes along, I try to wear the edges and give it some texture to paint on later. Right here, I'm just fitting on the guy, and I determined that it's just too short. So I'm going to add another like popsicle stick, like half or whatever, and glue that on, and that kind of solves the problem. I super glue my miniatures with super glue gel, and it just gives it a more secure bond. The paint handles I use are from Hobby Lobby, but it's basically just a wooden candelabra that I stuff with blue tack, and then I securely stick it on. It's not as great as Hero Forge, but I do think that some of the details are a little more painter friendly for beginners, probably because they stick out a little more proud than Hero Forge does. Basically, this character is an undead pirate. He's a warlock. I told my DM that I wanted a Davy Jones character, and he shot me back a short story about a shipwreck that claims the souls of sunken sailors and revives them to do the ghost ship's bidding. Next, I need to build some miniatures for the spells that this undead pirate can cast. What this does is it helps me remember what spells I can use. I'm kind of ADD, so I get distracted pretty easy. Even in Mordheim, I forget to use spells and stuff like that. I forget rules all the time, and so I have a few tools that I like to use. This weekend I went hiking in Idlewild to kind of gather some basing materials from fallen tree bark and stuff. It was really fun. My wife and I went camping in Lake Hemet. This week actually is my 9-year wedding anniversary. That's a little bit about personal life. Crazy week getting this video out.
I'd just like to take a quick second to thank my Patreon members, Leroy, MoonBad, and Feder. You guys are so great. Thank you. My Patreon has a ton of free STLs and templates, and I keep that free because of my Patreon members. So if you would like to help fund the channel, the other way you can do it is order a t-shirt.
It's going to serve a couple purposes because I need to learn what this spell does, and I need a miniature to represent it. So in order to represent that spell well, I do need to learn the spell. This is a nice way to trick myself into learning it. So if you have a Mordheim spell that you always forget to cast, like me, this might be the best way to represent it. Another way that I do that is I make spell cards to represent the spell. And this is for my other D&D character. He has a couple magic items. And this is another tarot card. A Blood Hunter character. They have a ton of features that I couldn't remember. So minimizing the amount of words that I use per card tricked me into learning the spell. And you can do the same thing about familiars. So I'm gonna have a digital file that you guys can print out on Patreon for you guys to download for free. Alright, so the first spell that we're going to be making a miniature for is called Arms of Hadar. This is a Warlock Fathomless spell, or more of a subclass feature actually, because my patron is a ghost shipwreck. I figured probably the best way to kind of flavor the spell would be, instead of tentacles, for an underwater campaign, maybe that's too on the nose. I wanted to do like rigging and stuff like that. So I'm doing the nets that go up to the crow's nests with this. I'm using pipe cleaners because it already has an armature wire in it, and then I just singeing off the hairs. And what that does is it just makes it a lot easier to work with, and makes it paintable, gives it a hard shell, and it makes it thinner too, which I don't know, you can tell that like it just looks so convincing, and I am pleasantly surprised. I base coated this with a tan. It's the same tan I use for my like Tudor houses. I made a dip wash with some acrylic ink and soapy water, and I let that dry. Alright, so this next spell is called Summon Undead. It's actually a spell I hadn't heard before. I don't know if it's new or whatever, but basically you can summon like a ghost, a skeleton, or kind of like a Nurgle bloated plague, undead plague thing. Anyway, I kind of wanted one miniature to represent all of those. So I kind of learned what each stat block does, and I decided a undead shark would be kind of the best thing for this underwater campaign. To tie it in with the ghost ship, I 3D printed a helm piece and cut it up and had it like kind of sticking out of where maybe the gills would be to kind of indicate that it is a dead shark. 3D printed like mermaid figurehead and stuck it down onto the base as well. I did some 3D, the 3D print failed in some spots, but weirdly everything on the 3D print still printed except for the tail of the shark. So I did some green stuff work on that. Again, I used pipe cleaners for the rope. And then I put like one of those parasitic fish or symbiotic relationship fish that like clasps onto the fins of the shark, just to kind of show that this shark kind of has gone through hell a bit. While we were camping, I was trying to think of like how this spell would look, how this spell would look in game, and so I decided that the spell component in like as written is just like a gold gilded skull, which I don't think fits the character all that much. So as flavor, like for flavor's sake, I'm putting 50 gold into the skull of an enemy, and then I'm crushing it, and a whirlpool opens up, dropping an anchor and like a pulley and rope. Simon, my undead pirate, is gonna draw that rope and pull through an undead shark, ravenous, ready to attack the enemy player. For me, flavoring spells is an essential, and it helps me understand the spell better, because I don't want to flavor a spell wrong. It's another way of tricking myself into learning the rules. It also gets me excited for casting a spell, because I get to show everyone like, hey, I've thought this out. I think it's gonna be really cool. So that's just another tip to like kind of think out how the spell works. When I was trying to come up with like my flavor text, I was just gonna crush the skull, whirlpool, shark swims out. But I think it adds a little more flavor when your character has a little more interaction with the spell casting. So having that extra rope, the Simon pulling that shark through, really gives a little more life to the spell and a little more interaction. So it kind of also illustrates that this shark is under Simon's control. And I don't know, maybe I'm just looking too far into the text of the spell, but it's another way of putting that detail into there that lets me know, that tricks me into learning the spell like text and whatnot. So, all right, so finally time to talk about the painting of this thing. Something I like to do is I've always liked to paint with a black base coat. But when you paint with a black base coat and you use Army Speed paint, which is my favorite paint right now, you come up with the problem where the speed paint has nothing to go from white to dark. So to me, it adds a bit more dimension, and you kind of learn how to mix colors a little better when you add a bit of an opaque paint like white or teal to a speed paint. I kind of use speed paints in an unconventional way, but it's the way that my mind understands it a little better. I never liked using a white base coat. By necessity, I've had to kind of adapt my way of painting towards that. I answer every comment, so if you have any questions about the paint process, feel free to ask below. Also, I do have live streams where I paint a miniature from start to finish. Check out those live streams. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. If you want to help us get there, feel free to subscribe if I've earned that subscription. And just thank you so much for watching. Because of you guys' support with the merch and the Patreon, I finally cobbled enough money together to get an actual camera instead of using my phone every time. So I just would like to show my appreciation in that way, just by thanking you guys. And I mean, I'm as big of a fan of you as you guys are of me. So if you would like to show me what you guys do, tag me on Instagram and join the Discord server. Show off all your stuff, because that's one of my favorite parts of this whole situation, is seeing what you guys make too. So, yeah. Have a good one.